wondering, okay, good.
Sorry.
What I'm interested if it's a pine tree amendment. Can you turn that off?
Yeah.
It's a pine tree amendment bill that's making its way through the legislature, but it's a constitutional amendment. There is a town resolution attached to it. And without I really just don't, we really just don't have the wherewithal to discuss it tonight. But I was wondering if it was something that you would want to vet at the next meeting. I know you haven't had time to look at it yet. It is a constitutional amendment, it's a state constitutional amendment, and it's about protecting our environment. And it's something that we can move forward with council approval, of course. But I really wanted it to start here in this committee. Thoughts?
So Cheryl, I did get a chance to log on to the website and look at it, and it was unclear to me what the ramifications were of supporting it. It
Okay.
seemed to me like either you support it or you don't, but I didn't know what were the ramifications of that. What does it mean for the town to actually do that, and then what does it mean? What do we have to do? What are our responsibilities?
So Dan, that would be the discussion. That would be the discussion.
So yeah, I'm willing to discuss it, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So should we just, we can't discuss it tonight, but should we throw it on the agenda for next month?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yes?
Good to me too.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you'll have a chance to look at it. I don't know where it's going to be in the legislature by the time we get to it, but we can get to it anyway and at least be up to date on what's happening around the state. And like I said, I just got it this morning. I was aware of it, but I didn't get the full-on town resolution, all that fun stuff. So, all right, we'll put it on the agenda for next month. So the next meeting. So, okay, there we go. Good.
Excellent.
That's the quick version. So great. And then the next one, and the only thing that we really need to discuss tonight is the prioritization for the community resilience grant. And Belle and Megan are going to take over. So any questions that you have, and you'll put something up on the screen. I'm assuming too.
Yes.
Okay, so Belle will share her screen, and Megan will share her screen. So good.
Is it the 2/8/22 that you edited earlier today? All right.
And I had a couple of questions on that too. So.
So I can, and then Cheryl, if you wanted to, it's in the Environment Committee Drive. If you wanted to just,
I can. I'll
Okay.
get it. Yeah, I'll pull it up.
so if you're looking for it, this is in the Environment Committee Drive, and it's called Community Partnership Grant Ideas Notes 2/8/22. If that makes it easier to read.
Follow along.
Yeah. We would have to make it like the entire screen.
I know.
For me
I
to
just
read
have
it
put
from
my
here.
glasses on. I can't see this far away. I can see up close.
So the last month or last meeting, I guess it was earlier this month, we talked about a bunch of different ideas. And Megan and I were committed to going back, researching, getting pricing for those ideas, and then bringing that back to the group in order to better prioritize what it is that we would like to submit for. As a reminder, and Megan has put this right at the top, when we sign the resolution, we are agreeing to try and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. So that's what our projects should be leading towards.
Bill, is that for like the entire town, or is this focused on like the town of Orono municipal buildings and or different things with that?
That's the town. So we have a project, a regional project that has gone out to RFP. And Dan, if you're still listening, we realized belatedly that while we added you to the drive with the responses to the RFP, we forgot to invite you to the meeting. So we had the initial meeting today, and then we're hoping you can join us for the interviews next week. When we opened those RFPs for the regional climate plan, which has as phase one, the greenhouse gas baseline and vulnerability assessment, we realized that these consultants were probably envisioning a process a little bit more intense than we necessarily were thinking when we set the original budget. So BACS had a budget in place of about $40,000, and we're guessing, because these RFPs came back with an 8-month engagement, we're guessing that it's going to be more than $40,000. We're not able to open those cost proposal envelopes until after we select a consultant, and then we're allowed to open the cost proposal envelope. So we won't know what the proposal is until next week sometime when we open those envelopes. I propose that what we should do is we should look at the projects that we have, kind of rank them in priority, but rank this phase one baseline assessment as the #1 priority, because it's planning and it tells us where we are right now so that we can rank ourselves and figure out what it is that we're doing, so that when we have put in mitigation strategies and our greenhouse gas emissions go down, we have to actually be able to show that because we've had a baseline done.
So the baseline would be all the municipal buildings?
The baseline is the entire,
Public safety.
no, it's the entire community.
Okay,
So it's the greenhouse gas emissions for Orono, all the electricity used in the town, all the natural gas used in the town. They try to make an estimate of how much fuel oil is being used based on the type of properties, residential and commercial. They try to put a number to the vehicle miles traveled, the type of vehicles, the carbon emissions from that. There's 11 different categories that they will look at for greenhouse gas emissions to create an assessment. They're doing this region wide, but there'll be an Orono specific number.
so we have 25,000. If that is the first priority, 25,000 would be set aside for that.
We don't know.
Okay,
We would have to we have to open that cost envelope, find out what it is that they're proposing, negotiate, and then find out what, if there's anything that's over $40,000, what is Orono's share of that?
okay.
And we'll know more by next week. But at this point, we're in I was saying to Cheryl that this grant application has been a race between the cart and the horse. And at this point, the cart is well down the hill and gaining speed, and the horse is still sitting in the barn. So we're hoping to be able to catch up.
So Belle, I got a question.
Yes.
So this seems like an odd sort of like way of doing it, where you're not allowed to open up their proposal till you've chosen them.
It's because it's done with all federal dollars. It's the federal RFP process, because you must choose the consultant based on qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to choose the consultant based on whether they are the best qualified person to do or firm to do the
Yeah, to do the job.
project. And
So
then
if
you
you-
open
so
the bid.
yeah, so if you pick the best one and then you open the envelope and it's like $1 million, are you
Then
allowed?
can- Yeah.
Can you
so
tell them to
can-
go away?
Yeah, so you can negotiate with them, and then you kind of go back and forth a couple times, and then you say, this is my last and final offer, best and final offer, and they say yay or nay, and if they say, yeah, we can't take that, then we say, okay, and we can go down to the next best qualified
The
consultant.
number 2.
So
Okay.
You can set a price then. I mean, you can say, this is what we've got. So it's not like, we're gonna open this envelope, you're the contractor, and we have to do.
You don't, right, so you open the envelope and you don't have to accept it, but it could be that, so typically what happens is you do, they often call it value engineering. So you reduce the scope of what you're asking for, that might be one way you do it. You ask the consultant to sharpen their pencil, that's another way to do it. You kind of go back and forth between those two strategies to see if you can come to an agreement on a cost. And, oftentimes you come to an agreement, sometimes you have, it flames out and you go to the next consultant. I would say in this case, we have 2 very strong proposals that are kind of neck and neck, so we'll know more after the interviews and the cost proposal envelopes are open. So I don't think that we're looking at applying for this grant for the full 50,000 in order to support phase 1.
Right.
I suspect that it might be somewhere between 10 and 25.
So can I ask the committee then, so what we should do without really knowing the cost is prioritize that we definitely need a baseline for energy uses, that really should be the first thing that we look at. So is that agreeable to the committee? Is that something that we can come to a consensus on, or maybe talk about, because we can't really talk about money at the moment until until we get the proposals, and but we can talk about priorities. And I'm gonna have to agree that I think that baseline is probably a priority. If Bax's can't, if the regional plan isn't gonna cover it fully. Right. Any other thoughts on putting that down? And that would be down, if you look at your, if you guys are probably on that page, but it's page 2, I think, down at the bottom.
Did you do
In blue.
Oh, no, that's different. It's at the very top here, Cheryl. The regional and Orono specific facts RFP. came
Oh,
in.
yeah, but I was looking at the 25,000 baseline.
That's different. That's the municipal buildings only. That is the energy.
I thought that's what we were talking about. Was the municipal
No,
buildings.
this is the greenhouse gas. The regional green, or, the entire town's greenhouse gas assessment. What the energy building assessment is, it looks at the mechanical systems, it looks at the structure, it looks at the windows, et cetera, and makes proposals for how you might reduce
Okay.
your energy use.
I've got a question. I'm a little bit confused here. I know last meeting we talked about a regional plan, that there was going to be another round of potentials for applying for this grant. And it seemed like
Right.
the last time we met, we were saying that this should be Orono, like within the town of Orono focus, because there was going to be a regional sort of plan with this. Are you saying that we need to get this phase 1 from a regional level done
So
beforehand?
what's changed between last time and this time is we thought that phase 1 was going to be completely covered by BAS, by the regional. And like I said, we won't know until next week when we open the proposals if phase 1 could be completely covered by BAS. Based on all the consultants coming in and saying that it's an 8-month process, we're thinking that it's probably more than the $40,000 that was budgeted by BAS. BAS doesn't have any additional money to give to it, so if we want to get it done, which gets our baseline, our Orono specific baseline done, then we would have to kick in funding for it. Not having any funding budgeted for it, that this round is the right timing for us to get that funding to cover it. So yes, it is a change from, it's a change from yesterday to today.
To today. So the data that is gathered from Orono's greenhouse gas emissions, the baseline, right, will be part of the regional report as well.
Right, so it'll be part of the regional report, but there'll be Orono specific information so that we can take that and move forward. So it won't be the Bax region all clumped together and you can't tease out the Orono information. It'll be specific to
Okay,
each community, but. Orono.
okay, all right. I like the idea of, but I still like the idea of the baseline energy usage as well
So then the next,
at the same time.
yep, so the next project that we went and looked at was the in-depth building assessments. And like I mentioned, that was the mechanical review, the structure, the windows, that type of thing. And that is about 25,000. I asked the engineer for an updated estimate. He said, yes, that's the number, but let me go back and confirm. And then when I asked again today, he never came back and confirmed. But we believe that that would cover 5 buildings. We left off the public safety building because that has its own independent review that's already going on, that's already funded, so we don't need to do that one. The other projects that we looked at were the vendor sustainability fair. Initially, we had that at a pretty high cost. We have kind of reduced that down. We collaborated. We looked at the collaboration with Dan's office, getting the AmeriCorps volunteer to do most of the planning work, and having it, putting it out, marketing it, and getting some sort of a raffle item that would drive people to actually attend. The idea would be that this type of program, once you got it up and on its feet, that it would be sustainable over the year after year, and that it would pay for itself. One thing that we would really need to flesh out is how it's different than the home show, which talks about how to improve your house. It's not only and specifically targeted to sustainability and weatherization or electrification. And I think, which I didn't think of this morning when the question was asked, one of the differences would be the seminars and lectures. And our primary goal with this item was to educate the public and to help lower our greenhouse gas emissions by having private residences make improvements in their own
Right.
homes.
Exactly. So after looking at this, one of the reasons that I want to do this, but did you talk to Matt Damon?
I did.
Okay, good. One of the things that I want to do with this, if we can, with this grant money, if there's any grant money left, after everything, is make sure that folks in Orono who need weatherization can get it at a reasonable cost. So, and let me finish.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that our most vulnerable populations can get it first. So the trailer park Havasu out here, anybody that, and so my thinking is that a lot of these folks, this vulnerable population are not going to go to Orono.
Right.
What are we
But
gonna do
the
for
difference
them?
is that they can be covered by ARPA money.
Okay,
So what we're
Great.
trying to do
Can
with
we
this
put that on
grant
there
is only, it's tackle things that we can't do with other
ARPA money.
funding
okay,
sources. And ARPA, for the vulnerable population,
right,
we are able to fund weatherization projects
okay.
and programs that get up and
Alright.
running.
I don't want to lose sight of that. And I
No.
want to make sure that that is written down somewhere,
And it
that we
is,
have that part of it is covered, because it's really important that they get covered.
yep, and that is, every time I mention it, Sophie says, it's on my list for ARPA money.
Okay, good.
So,
Okay, good. And would that apply also to Talmar? Or,
no,
okay,
because Talmar is not, while it's low income housing, it's not
exactly.
owned by low income.
Right, the housing
Assets.
foundation. Okay. All right. Okay, and those are those are kind of that's just those are my concerns, just making sure that that we're being equitable, that people can get what they need.
Yes.
Okay.
And the, when I spoke with Matt Damon, and Megan spoke with Troy Moon about these kind of weatherization, or what was the one in Portland called? Electrify
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And that is essentially a partnership with a vendor. It costs the town nothing.
Right.
Other than maybe a few promotional materials or something like that. But that we wouldn't really need to apply for grant funding in order to do a program like that.
Okay.
Megan's in the process of madly editing. The other item that we had on our list was Stormwater Walk. And in our meeting earlier today, Sophie has said that because that is related to stormwater infrastructure, that can also be ARPA funded.
Okay, good.
So we're going to not recommend doing that. We looked at getting a piece of community equipment, a $600 infrared camera. And I put a rough number on that is about $1,000. And you'd want to make sure you built an educational piece on that. And that's such low dollars that if we're at 49,000, then let's add it in. But otherwise, we can find funding for it elsewhere. I think it would be a good idea to do.
Yeah.
We talked about EV chargers. And we have a student that's currently working on that project. There may be efficiency main funding sometime in the future that would pay for half of it. Staff would not recommend moving that one forward on the priority list at this time, because we think that there's future potential, and that in this case, the cart is way ahead of the horse in order for applying for the grant money. But that's just staff recommendation. And then another thing that we didn't actually talk about, but you may want to consider, is hiring a facilitator to complete our draft local plan that we have started with Cheryl. And so this would be for anybody who is involved in the comprehensive plan. We would hire somebody like Evan to come in, help us do some public meetings, help us do some drafting of the language, help us walk through the ideas that are in that main won't wait. And then so we get a more polished, finished draft, so that when we have future grant applications, we go back to that and we say, here are all our priorities. Estimates on that would be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. So that's kind of the, Cheryl and Dan, you guys were going to kind of, I never heard back from you on what you thought additional costs for doing the window dressers might be.
Window dressers, yeah.
We can, if we can target that at
If we
low
can-
income, we can do that with ARPA funding.
Right, but window dressers, I mean, if we can find a place in Orono to do it, I mean, it cost us $75 the last time. But if we can find somebody to volunteer time, that's taken care of, and they really have everything set up already. It's all volunteer. I mean, I don't see window dressers as a huge cost.
I think Dan was thinking, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share so we can see everybody
Yeah.
again. I think Dan was thinking that there were definitely some expenses that were not covered. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, Dan.
Yeah. If you're going to provide window inserts for low income populations, it costs money. Someone has to pay for those inserts. So that's where the cost will really add up.
Yeah,
But
I
if you
think
follow
we're
the-
talking about van and food and like they were
We
kind
definitely
of
were
these.
talking about lunch, like a
Yeah.
food.
Yeah, the costs of the build itself are relatively minor.
Right, that's what I'm
The
saying.
cost of the inserts, they can be, anywhere from $30 to $60 per window. So if you're paying for people to have all of these free inserts,
Well, Dan, it would also be people who wanted them too, who were paying for them.
well, that's exactly it. So that's like the AmeriCorps model where they try and do like 50-50, like 50% are
Right.
paying, 50% are low income, and then
Are you
AmeriCorps covers the low income folks.
Are you supervising AmeriCorps again?
Maybe.
Is that a definite maybe?
It's a definite maybe. Yeah, it's in process.
So.
We just hired someone who's going to supervise all of the program, basically, where Sally Slavensky was doing it before. Now there's going to be like a full-time person doing it. So that's a good sign. So it's a sign that it will move ahead, and we likely will have someone here in Orono.
Do you want to, can we still coordinate with Orono to do that? Or is that a separate, would that be separate and Orono would be separate? Orono
I
would
mean,
do the
Orono, I mean, Orono as a town could apply to the program and have a full-time person based in the town of Orono. But I'm probably going to have someone based on campus as well.
I mean, do the inserts again in Orono through your program?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Or yes, we can talk about it.
I mean, yeah, but so if I'm going to do the window insert program through the AmeriCorps,
Right.
I was under the impression that you wanted to do another one, separate one for Orono, or you want to combine.
Yeah. But find a location, quickly that's a little bit more conducive, although the church was a good location, but yeah.
That was a great location last year. Yeah, the ceiling was low, but other than that, it was great.
So that's what I was thinking, is combining it. If we combined it, then the cost would we'd have the cost down, keep the cost down.
Yeah, if we combine it, the cost of pulling it off would be like, $1,000 or less, or maybe 1,000 to 2,000, something like that.
Right. Can we do that? Put down like $1,000 instead of.
Yeah, I can put it on the list, but
Okay.
that's so.
I mean, yeah, we can figure out a much more accurate number, but
Right.
it will be a minor amount compared to these big, $10,000 projects.
Right.
And I also think that if it is for low income, that ARPA can assist with that. And Sophie is on, so let me see if she's sent me a text or anything.
Okay,
At $1,000, probably managed through our public health account.
perfect.
How did we ever do this without cell phones?
I don't know. Thank you, Sophie.
And Zoom. So, I think window dressers we can cover.
Good.
So, we want to talk about priority setting now. The phase 1 funding for the baseline greenhouse gas emissions and vulnerability assessment. That's what staff is recommending as the priority. How does the group feel about that?
I'm fine with that. I'd be just curious to find out how much. That's,
We'll let you know.
yeah. What about you guys?
That, to me, sounds reasonable. And it sounds like it's maybe a must if part of this is requiring that we are working towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to know what those are now, right? So it sounds like that's maybe like it sounded, I wish it would be kind of nice if it was being able to wrap into when we're applying for this as a region, but if that's not possible, then doing this now makes sense. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, did I miss something earlier? We're setting a baseline for our greenhouse gas emissions. Is this separate from the regional initiative?
No, it's part of the regional initiative. Dan, you might have been like transitioning between car and computer when I kind of fell on my sword. We realized that we added you to the drive that had the RFP responses, but never added you to the calendar invite for the scoring session.
Mhm.
So when we did the scoring session and all of us had reviewed them, all but the lowest scoring response said that this was going to be an 8-month phase 1, which is greenhouse gas emissions and vulnerability assessment. And at an 8-month consultant engagement, a $40,000 budget doesn't feel sufficient. We won't know what the actual cost is going to be until we open the cost proposals. And that's when we had that conversation about when you can open the cost proposals and how you can negotiate
Yeah. So I get that. I would imagine though, the largest portion of that cost is going to be the vulnerability assessment.
which is part of phase 1.
Yeah.
Phase 2 has like mitigation and adaptation strategies, et cetera.
So what are we talking about here with this greenhouse gas?
So the
baseline?
greenhouse, what I am suggesting is that if that project comes in over budget, that BAX has no additional funding. In order for Orono to get the greenhouse gas assessment to move forward, we would have to put in additional funding, and that we apply for that additional funding through this project. We initially thought that we would only have to apply for that regional plan for the second round of funding, but I don't think that we're in that position right now.
We think we're going to have to apply for funding for both phases.
Right. Now this phase, I'm hoping that maybe we only have to apply for $10,000 and that gets us a finished phase 1 with a greenhouse gas baseline assessment and the vulnerability assessment.
Mhm.
But I won't know that until next week.
No, because of the process. Yeah.
But go ahead.
I have a question. So when you say here that on the phase 2 gives ideas of mitigation strategies, it's because we don't have a decision yet for the mitigations, right?
So phase 2 of the regional plan looks at all sorts of different, there's actually a library out there of 100+ mitigation strategies for communities take. A lot of those are like building codes, land use ordinances, increasing the walkability of your community, all those types of things. And so what they'll do is they'll have a lot of public meetings and talk to the community about what's most important, how sensitive is our greenhouse gas baseline to different types of mitigation strategies, carbon reducers. Right.
When does phase 2 kick in?
Phase 2 would be after phase one. So phase 1, they're suggesting will take about 8 months. So, and that we wouldn't really even start until April. So you're looking at the start of 2023 before phase 2 begins the process.
I'm still gonna, I still want to bundle the baseline with the energy.
The building assessment.
Yeah, as the top.
Okay, so
'Cause
phase
we
1,
need- I think we need baselines. I mean, we need baselines.
okay,
I agree, Cheryl. You can't
And benchmarks.
reduce your emissions if you don't know what your emissions are.
Right.
Yeah, and if you don't know
I will
where,
also, go ahead, sorry.
oh, I was about to say, if we don't know where we are, we can't say what we need to do as part of a region anyway, because the region won't know what their greenhouse emissions are if the constituent towns don't know what their emissions are.
The building assessment's also a council priority,
Yes,
which I think is important.
right.
To remember. So, so I've got phase 1 funding and building assessment as top priorities. What's the feeling on the next one on the list?
My next one is weatherize Orono.
So that's a no cost. So weatherize Orono specifically is a no cost, but are you speaking of the vendor fair?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm thinking, when I say weatherize Orono, I think I'm thinking big umbrella and then
Okay.
the little tents underneath it.
okay, when you say weatherize,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
of
yeah.
like that one specific thing.
Yeah, no, that's
Gotcha.
kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Are you talking
and
about
it-
these, that's below on the list, the vendor sustainability fair? That would include the weatherize or no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Have we talked to anybody else in the regional planning group about this vendor fair? I mean, I feel like if we're doing a not for like necessarily funding kind of purposes, but if we're doing something that's hosted at the university, I usually think this is not just a town of Orono sort of event, but something that's, you know, the greater Orono community. Is that something that, in terms of like cost sharing, would Bangor, Old Town, other communities be interested in doing this? I mean, if we're renting the space and we're having the vendors there,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's just Orono, or I think like the cost would be the same if it's one town or 10 towns. So is that
So
something?
we haven't approached any other communities to see if they wanted to support it. I think, of course, we'll know more once we get true pricing in for that phase 1.
Mhm.
So we could certainly try to, with other funding sources come other opinions. So it gets a little bit harder to organize and pull together and pull off.
Right.
So I would say, let's get, if we need to, let's get other stakeholders involved if we need additional funding.
I think we need subcommittees for all, because I think the weatherize Orono part is going to be cool. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that Orono could sponsor, I mean, we could sponsor and invite folks from around, from VZ and Bradley and Old Town, and I mean, the folks in the general Orono region. I'm interested in us, I'm interested in the vendor fair, but I'm primarily interested in Orono. But VZ is part of our regional too, and I don't think they would have the I want to say the wherewithal, I guess, the resources, yeah, to do something like this. But I certainly think that we could invite folks, but maybe if Orono was a sponsor. Bell has, 10,000 for this, but it's not going to be 10,000 if we, if you look back down through the itemization, it's more like, I don't know, a couple thousand.
I think we've got
3,000.
7 in there for itemized, and then
Right.
We had a big giveaway if we were trying.
Which we can trim and work with.
Yeah, so
That stuff can be worked with.
and I
yeah.
think that we can reduce the amount, particularly if we're trying to fit it in.
Right,
But if we're also trying to fill it out,
right.
then the money can be. I think you could responsibly spend 10,000 putting it on. I think you can do it on.
I don't know if I
a
want to spend 10,000.
smaller shoestring.
Yeah. But if we've got ARPA funds too, it'd be nice to know what that is and what, what's available for that.
So ARPA wouldn't be able to do the vendor fair,
Right,
but can do the
right,
actual work.
right. And the other thing that I was interested in with Weatherize Orono is the, some kind of a lending program,
Which is ARPA,
which is ARPA, okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm thinking more along the lines of something that we did.
like
for
a
COVID.
revolving fund.
Right, for
Yeah.
the businesses,
Yep.
something along those lines. So
Um,
we've got ARPA funds for that.
Yep, so that I had asked Sophie about that. She was thinking that was an ARPA.
That could be an ARPA, that
Yeah.
could fall under.
And it
ARPA.
wouldn't fall under, the revolving loan fund would not fall under this.
Okay. And then the other thing on that list, Dan, is, or committee, are EV charging stations as well. Like, where do we put that?
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question.
Right.
I was gonna say, it'd be nice to have something permanent, come out of this. I know that the building energy efficiency and the weatherize Orono and the window inserts are all permanent, but it'd be nice to have something in the town that everyone can see. And a couple of level 2 charging stations, you could probably, if you applied for efficiency main funds, you could probably get away with, maybe $10,000 for 2 stations, depending on the status of those transformers in the parking lot.
Yeah, I was about to say that's the thing. So I work for Revision Energy. We do install EV chargers, and we're coming out somewhere around 12 to 15,000 per double charger station for infrastructure. And it also depends on where they end up being, how far you gotta run cable.
No, that sounds totally right. But efficiency main will pay half.
Right. So if you can get some funding in there too.
So if we had 10, yeah.
Yeah, and if you could bundle that work in with some other infrastructure work in those parking lots, like repaving or whatever, that could save you some money, because if you have to repave over the top of where you trench to get those chargers in, and that's extra. But if you do the whole parking, you have to do the whole parking lot anyway. It helps.
Well, we've got some locations in mind that would not require any trenching, so that would keep costs down.
Yeah.
So my concern about the EV chargers is that we would be rushing into a project, or we would be applying for funding for a project that we're not really ready. We don't have
To implement.
we don't have a bow on the EV project yet. And for something that requires infrastructure and installation and buy-in from the downtown business community, because it would be 2 parking spaces that would
Would
be
be only,
used for EV,
right.
that we are not ready to commit to putting those in yet. I think that we should do it, and I think that we can get there. And I think that there's other funding sources that we might be able to get to.
There's another community resilience grant behind this one though, right? What's the time period between the two?
September.
Okay,
So we would be in a better position at that point.
right.
And we would have and we would know what phase 2 is gonna look like.
What do you think about that, Dan? Waiting until the second round for funding?
There's no guarantees in life, but yeah, I think that's best.
And then the other that we had talked about, or that I had presented to you guys, that we had talked about last week, was the facilitator to develop the local plan.
I think that can wait too.
Okay.
Till September.
Okay.
Because we don't really need a facilitator right now either, because we haven't started the comprehensive plan.
So I have essentially 3 items on the list for priorities. If phase 1 funding does not come out to be that we don't need very much, what comes right below the vendor fare? What's next?
I would say EV chargers.
Yeah, we can't do it right away, but that's what I would say too.
I mean,
There's nothing
so
else.
the only thing holding us back is the buy-in from the local businesses surrounding that lot, right? So that could be addressed pretty quickly.
What if we put the chargers not in the Pine Street parking lot, but in the bank parking lot?
So-
over here?
The reason why we're considering
here.
the Pine Tree parking lot is because there's a transformer right in the middle of that parking lot.
Okay,
And you could put them right there.
Right.
And it is right next to
Right.
the energy-
Yeah, that's
the
right.
electricity source, so.
My concern with this is, we're talking about doing a level 2 charger, correct? With this?
Yeah, the level 3s are like out of this world expensive, and
Okay.
you've got to rely on the state to pay for all of it.
But is the level 2 though, from conversations here, that's if you want to fully charge, you're parking there for hours, right?
Yeah,
Maybe a
people aren't going to drive into Orono to fully charge. They're going to drive in to get a meal or a beer, and then they're going to plug in while however long they're in the restaurant or bar, and then they're going to drive away.
Opportunistic charging, not,
It's not going to be a destination charge.
right.
It's going to be just passing through. Oh, I may as well plug in because it's here.
And there are a lot more plug-in hybrids on the road these days. I've been noticing.
Yeah, so a level 2 will give you between 20 and 30 miles of range per hour of charge. So if you've got a plug-in hybrid, 1 hour will pretty much fill your battery. 2 hours will generally top it off. If you've got a fully electric, you need 8 to 12 hours on a level 2.
Right.
That's why you won't get you won't get people coming here just to charge. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if we had a level 3, then perhaps you would. But they're so expensive.
I might come off the interstate and plug in if I was driving to Millinocket or something, and come in and plug in as opposed to getting gas. And
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you were 50 miles short of your destination, and you knew you were heading way north, you could come and stop in Orono, go for a meal, spend 2 hours eating your meal, and you get that extra range in your car. That would work. But there's going to be all kinds. I mean, a level 2 is a level 2. It is what it is. You can't. It's not going to do more than it.
Yeah,
Typically can.
right, then you can do it at your home, at your house. What about, did you look into solar panels at all for the municipal buildings?
no, since we didn't have that on our list of
Right,
priorities.
I'm thinking if we have to put off the charging stations for I'm trying to think of, for physical reasons, for land use reasons or whatever, getting in touch with the restaurant owners. where was I headed?
What would be next on the list?
What would be next would, yeah. Something else that besides the vendor fair, I mean, that, I feel like that's a whole subcommittee to me. That's getting people, that's a big project, I feel like.
I mean, what about committing a whole load of money to inserts and actually providing free inserts for a large percentage of the low-income residents?
We can do it with ARPA funds, I think, and we can't use this grant for things you can get other funding.
With ARPA funds. We've got some
But
ARPA.
how will we find that out? Whether or not we can do that with ARPA funds?
Sophie says that we can weatherize low-income houses with ARPA funds. That is the direction that I have received from Sophie when I talked to her.
And do you know what kind of amounts are we talking with ARPA? What sort of
So
numbers?
the town of Orono got 1.1 million for ARPA funds. Now, Rob Yerkes will tell you that he spent it last year on infrastructure upgrades, like for storm sewer or sanitary sewer. But you know, that's council will set those priorities on spending.
Right.
Can we include
One project
something?
that's already approved is the upgrading council chambers.
Yeah, go ahead, Adriana.
I was thinking I'm just missing something that's more community based, but it's not necessarily anything that would relate to ARCA fund. Is that anything that crosses your mind? I'm thinking maybe food related. I know there was something on the thing about food, but we couldn't do food.
That was about buying food because of COVID restrictions. Are you
Oh,
thinking
okay.
That vendor fair thing, it says something about we don't know if we can buy food.
Oh,
because-
right.
Right.
We're not sure. We don't know what will happen
Right,
by next fall for COVID restrictions. So it might be that we're completely open and back to normal, and we can have food like a buffet at the
Mhm.
which would,
vendor fair, or
yeah,
it
which
might
would
be
go
that
under
we
that
cannot.
vendor, right, that would go under that sustainability fair, $10,000 kind of mark
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, one thing that crosses my mind is something, could we do something that it's benefiting the local producers and, you know, at the same time, it relates to resilient, you know, if we can redirect some of the food to these people in need, or and maybe do some kind of fair that also helps people eat healthier. And because all of that connects to also, you know, eating better, living better, and better environments. So I don't know if we could include something that relates.
I don't recall that being on the list of community actions. I'm looking.
Yeah, on the list, there was something more broad and not so specific like that.
It says grow jobs and protect natural resource industries. I don't think Orono has any true natural resource industries that come to mind.
Not yet.
Right.
There's a setting targets for increasing green space and tree planting to increase shade and water access. But I mean,
What-
at this point, my concern is that we're back to
The basic discussion,
brainstorming
yeah,
ideas that
right.
we've got to get it.
I gotta get it out.
together.
So we don't, so asking, so it's the money too, and 50,000 is the max, right?
Yeah.
Do we have to ask for a $50,000
No.
grant?
You don't.
Okay.
One thing actually that I think I sent it on the email. I'm not sure if you guys got my email because I was out of in a very remote place with a very bad internet connection. But one thing I ask, and then please jump in if you feel like this is not the right time to talk about it, but it's about the sustainability website that it's actually a community website that I created.
That's
And I
right.
sent the email asking if we could get some of the fund that would be very low and I can actually do the math and calculate how much it would be to get just simply to get the ownership of the website for the community. So we could have a community website that is for sustainability.
So at $45 at most for a year, that can be covered under a budget if council
Okay.
wants to support that.
I think that's a good idea, Adriana. I know how hard you've worked on that, and it's really, it really is a community benefit, and I think that's the direction that you wanted it to go in. And we did talk about what we could do with that work that she has, that she's done. I mean, we could put it in as build a community. I don't know. I don't know how to fit that in, but I think it's a good idea to have some kind of a go-to or a technical assistance maybe for the town or something. The town has a website. Could we link it?
Yeah, and that
So-
would be specifically community for the community, not so much
Yeah.
representing the
typically
town.
what we would do is we
Right.
would either sponsor or like if what we're trying to do is get that hosting fee, then sponsor, donate, whatever the right language is for that. That can come out of operating
Okay.
funds. Instead what we're talking about is like further developing the website, and that there needs to be additional costs added to that, that would be a different conversation. And you want to make sure that it would be pretty specifically targeted towards that idea of how we're going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions.
Mhm.
Community resiliency.
Yeah.
Right. Environmental resiliency.
I know,
Go ahead.
I know that part of the proposal, part 2, is looking at the municipal buildings and figuring out what would need to be done. But it sounded like there were at least a handful of ideas for what could be done now. So I think you'd mentioned something about replacing a heat pump or something. Are there projects that you already kind of know should be done anyway that we could put on there? Or should we be waiting for the assessment of the municipal buildings done first?
The biggest project that we know of, it's a $45,000 project to upgrade the mechanical systems in the public safety building. After further review of ARPA funding and guidance, see, we have spent this ARPA funding like 6 times over. But after further review of that, because we could be improving the air distribution and handling system at the public safety building, that would be an ARPA eligible fund. So we talked about that particular project. And at $45,000, that would kind of complete your grant project. I think that getting the assessment done of the buildings would tell us what things would need to be done, because it might be that there are some small projects that we could do window dressers at Keith Anderson House. I don't know. But there might be some small projects, and then there might be capital projects that we would start putting into our capital plan to help us. And
Even insulating the roof at Keith Anderson, but we don't know what we don't know what those buildings are gonna come in at
right
to
do.
right.
So we included, even knowing that we don't know what the use of the Keith Anderson building might be, we included it to kind of ask them to look at some of the small things that can be done. So if the committee is okay with this approach of phase 1 funding, the building assessment and the vendor fair as really the core of our grant proposal, and if we're a little bit shy of the full $50,000, we'll be okay with that.
We'll just add more to the vendor
And
Just keep
well,
adding.
we can kind of maybe fluff it up to the full weatherized Orono program and add some things to
We
it.
can fluff it.
Is that an acceptable approach to the committee?
Yep.
I just want to say one more thing, education. Should we have, should 4 be a community education program, or is that also?
So we had kind of included a bunch of money in that vendor fair
Okay.
for kind of marketing and education.
Okay. Include. Lee, you were gonna say something.
Well, no, I was just going to say that seems like a good place to start, because then we're getting a baseline of things we can do in the or we're getting a baseline of where we're at now, so we can decide what we need to do in the future, and then we can take that low-hanging fruit of getting people involved and interested, and maybe just weatherizing their own homes, and then we're getting started there, and then we can build on that.
I agree.
Okay. I think we have direction.
Great. Anything else? Any other updates?
No, as I mentioned, we are continuing to move forward with that regional plan, and as soon as we have a consultant chosen, we will let you know. And Dan, hopefully you have an email from Bax with an invitation to do.
Yeah, I got an email from Maddie saying, sorry, she forgot to put me on the Zoom invite. So now
I checked to make
I'm,
sure you were on the Google Drive, and I didn't check to make sure you were on the calendar. I just assumed that it was on one or the other.
oh yeah, I'll read through the proposals.
Send
and
you
then
an
I'll,
email and tell you which two to read.
yeah,
Just-
yeah, then I'll be ready for the 30-minute Q&As next week.
Okay.
So before we leave this conversation, the next thing on the agenda is public comment, but I just wanted to ask Bill and Megan timeline. So when do you need to send
So-
in a draft of this? What do you need?
It's due on March 22nd.
Okay,
So we'll
That's
just,
3
we'll
weeks.
start putting it together.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah, it's about a month from now.
Once we get the price back on the Orono specific, the #1 priority, I plan on getting a draft of it right away. So that if it does need to circulate, there's plenty of time for people to
Okay.
look at it.
And council have to approve this?
Council has already approved the application.
Right.
Putting the application out,
Right.
and they, Sophie's saying council needs to authorize. I'm pretty sure council voted to authorize us applying,
This community resilience grant?
yeah, last council meeting. I will confirm that with her.
I don't know if we did it in council, we might have done it in committee.
No, it
No, we
was
did it in
at
council?
council,
Okay,
but I'll confirm it.
okay,
And so if council needs to authorize, we will get them to authorize at the March meeting.
okay.
But otherwise, we're all set to submit. Because we typically have, we get councils go ahead to make the application, but they
Right.
have to vote to accept the grant. And council did give us the go ahead to make the application.
Yes, that part I do remember, so I
Yeah.
was just curious if there was another stuff. Okay. If there's no other discussion, we have a public comment section, and I don't know if we have anyone.
So we have 2 actual attendees. You guys can't see this because I'm blocking this, but we actually have an attendee, and we have another one on Zoom. It sounds like a class has been assigned the task of attending a council committee meeting. So
And we're happy to have you
we're happy to have
anytime.
the public. Would you like to make any statements?
Okay.
We've already grilled the attendee in person when she first arrived, so we don't need to.
We
continue
did,
to-
because we like them. We want them to come visit us. So with no public comment, I guess we can adjourn. And our next meeting will be March something. March something.
March 23rd.
March
I'll see you on-
23rd.
Yeah, I'll see you on March something.
On March something. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
All righty. Thank
Thanks,
you so
everybody.
much.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.